Our guest on this week's episode of the LA Business Podcast started a football league. You don't hear that happening every day. Our guest, Sener Korkusuz, is the founder and CEO of American Sevens Football League, 7-on-7 football with no helmets. And you might be surprised to hear about the rationale about why that's a lot safer than NFL football in the United States. All right, let's jump right into this week's episode of the LA Business Podcast. Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Sener Korkusuz, CEO and co-founder of American Sevens Football League, a 7-on-7 football league without helmets and hard shell pads. We're going to come back to that. It's a very interesting concept. There are 28 teams in 4 divisions based around the country: New Jersey, Maryland, Florida, and Southern California. The league was founded in 2014 by you and President Ryan DePaul. Tell us a little bit about the journey. What inspired you to start a football league? That sounds like a lot of work.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I appreciate it. It was a journey, to say the least. Me personally, I was looking for my next venture. And so that's what led me to identifying what my old childhood friend, Ryan DePaul, had recreationally started a football league, no pads, no helmets, full contact tackle. And it had a life of its own. It was underground, but I saw that diamond in the rough that could be a national sport and even an international sport someday. And we were off to the races from 2014, and 2015 was our first season.
What kind of preparation does it take to kind of go to market with this type of product?
So, we came into this kind of not knowing, first time and learning the hard way. Having gone through it now, going into our 7th season, I have a ton of experience to answer that question. So what our preparation, maybe it was better off. Our preparation is we started bootstrapped.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go out and raise $100 million. Otherwise, we never would have, this would not exist today. Okay. So bootstrapped, we proved the product. We proved the entertainment value. We grew the fan base eventually to 500, 600,000 followers. We built media and distribution partnerships and put all the pieces in place to get to the point where we are today, where we're now expanding across the country, and we'll expect 8 divisions in 2022.
And how many divisions, like how many teams did you have when you launched initially?
So we launched with 2 divisions, Baltimore and New Jersey. Actually, 3 divisions, Baltimore, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Going through the years, we added most recently Florida in Orlando and San Diego in California. Orlando, Florida, and San Diego. And now moving into 2022, we'll be expanding from 4 divisions to 8 divisions. And we're looking to bring on Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Boston, Massachusetts, and believe it or not, Cincinnati, Ohio as well.
And why? Tell us about the reasoning behind how you position a completely new football league in the United States. What need did you see in the market?
The need was obvious from the player point of view. Players need game film to be looked at and evaluated to play at a higher level, or to go to college, or for various other reasons within sports. So first off, we were always able to provide game film, but most importantly, that game film is so exciting because our sport is so exciting and so entertaining that it drew attention and it went viral year after year. Sports Center, Bleacher Report, Sporting News, Barstool Sports, and all of the major media in sports have covered us. and that's only going to accelerate as we grow. And our guys are hometown heroes that we're turning into national stars as we move forward.
So let's talk about the component of the game with no helmets. I read a little bit about your site on your site, and you actually go a very interesting direction with the benefits of not having helmets. Can you talk a little bit about that for folks who are thinking that it might be more unsafe than standard NFL?
Sure. At first glance, it seems like this is crazy to play. How can you play without helmets? Haven't you heard of CTE, which is really repetitive head to head subconcussive blows that add up over the course of an athlete's lifetime? And traditional football, that is helmet to helmet contact on every single play that you can't avoid. I played Pop Warner, and it's not just that subconcussive hits. Some of those are big hits. Actually, every single game you have big helmet to helmet hits,
Sure.
not to mention the repetitive subconcussive blows. Our sport eliminates that. It virtually and practically, for all intents and purposes, eliminates that. Similar to rugby, guys are not repetitively on every single play hitting their head to head, whether subconcussive or on a big hit. That being said, it is a physical sport, one of the most physical sports, full contact football, and injuries will still happen. And that's anticipated as in other sports.
So the full contact nature of the sport, you tout that, right? Like it sounds like reading, poking around your site and watching some of your videos, you're talking about basically the UFC of football. Is that right?
Correct. And there's many different ways to analyze that. The obvious way is, apples to apples, but it's not necessarily that obvious when you get down to it. In fine detail, when you look at the MMA as compared to boxing, the MMA turns out to actually be safer and elevate head safety because you're not repetitively taking knockout blows to the head. You're also taking them on your body, on your legs, and just simple mathematics means you're going to take less head blows than in traditional boxing. And very similar in the A7FL compared to the NFL. That's what we did with our head safety.
So does
But
that
much, much, much safer because
does it make
you
it?
watch our game and you don't see that head to head contact.
Yeah, I was watching some of the clips, and you definitely don't see that head to head contact. Do you find that is that the common theme that overall this is a safer sport than like the NFL? How would you characterize it in terms of like overall
I
safety,
think
like just the head
overall,
safety?
yeah, overall, especially in terms of head safety, yes. Of course, you'll still have broken bones, bruised muscles, and strains and pulls, and it's still full contact tackle football. Safety is not really what catches the fans' attention. It's wow, these guys are barbarians. They're unbelievable. But football insiders know when you take off the helmet and the face mask and the shoulder pads, you remove the invincibility. And now you see the true athleticism of our guys. This is real football. This is the way football was meant to be played, not with helmets and hard pads. Anybody who challenges me on that, go for it.
I believe it. Look, there's so many interesting things that insiders of any given field know that are contrary. One of the things I've come to believe over the years is that when you're on Twitter and sometimes even on Facebook and Instagram, it's in a way like a very depressive type of media consumption. I've heard Twitter being called doom scrolling, and and like what happens is you have these headline readers, people who have an opinion. They don't even read the whole story, they just read an opinion. They say, see, the headline says something. They're not doing research, they're not experts in the field. It often doesn't surprise me to hear that someone in the field who's an expert has a very contrarian point of view than the majority of pop culture, because we're just not experts in that field. So it actually doesn't surprise me to hear some of the things you're saying. I will go back in and verify it, though. I'm very
Of
interested
course.
in that. but it's an interesting point of view because literally when I first saw this, I was like, how in the heck? Why? How are
Mm.
people not like dying out there? But it kind of, to me, it kind of makes sense, especially the fact that you're removing the invincibility component, which probably makes a big difference in the way people go at each other in the NFL.
Yes, and that is scientifically termed risk homeostasis.
Okay.
So going, yeah, and it's been studied and many studies, and we've done a study on this as well with the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I went to school. So when you go into a collision, you go in by instinct with the most protected part of your body, and when you have a helmet on your head, that's why you're pushing your head down, and that's why you have that. Remove the helmet, and the player's instinct to keep their head out of the equation of, in this case, a tackle takes over. And so that's why if you ever had a collision and you flinch away, that's instinct. It's very basics. This boils down to similar to rugby. It improves head safety, but you are still going to have constant blows in terms of hits and things like that. It's not a, this isn't badminton.
Yeah, it's not golf. So okay, so and nothing on against golf and badminton because that's hard work too.
It
It's just
is.
you're not going to get broken bones. So let's talk about the business aspect of this because what are like tell us about the first 5 6 years. I'm looking at the world prior to COVID, so 2014 to the end of 2019, that 5 year period. What are some of the things that you've learned? I mean, I imagine the logistics element of this is massive, especially when you're starting out. Um, like, what are some of the logistical components that you need to concern yourself with, and what are some of the learnings that you've had that you might go back and tell yourself the 2014 version of yourself here?
Mm-hmm. What comes to my head is that story of how do you eat an elephant, and it's the answer's piece by piece. And so by nature, we had to start that way, bootstrapped. We can only chew as much as we can afford to eat, and so budget was really the constraint of our growth. Going back, try to raise more money earlier and grow faster. But that being said, we grew at the rate that we were able to grow based on what we were making, and that helped us to focus on our primary goal, and that was get as much exposure as possible. It wasn't all of the sub goals, which put people in the seats, sell tickets, sell merchandise, sell concessions, do this, do that, do that, everything else. We can only focus on one thing, and we focused on the right thing. We got that national exposure. We grew the league. Now we're selling our divisions to owners across the country who will operate those divisions for ticket sales, concessions, merchandise, sponsors, and so forth at the local level. So it's a major, major milestone for us this season.
So is
Going
this
into
so are you is it does is there are there similarities there between a franchisor and a franchisee? Is that essentially what you are?
It's
What you're
similar, although
setting it
we're
up?
not technically a franchise.
Mhm.
We are a license agreement,
Okay.
but similar. It's a relationship where we've developed the program, we've developed the league, we've developed the processes, the systems, the technologies, the resources, staff, etc., um, and and we're able to now flow that down to our new division owners, and they're going to kick butt when they build that local community and fan base. And so that's what we haven't been able to focus on, and rightfully so. Now our division owners will take that advantage and really blow it up.
So tell us about the type of person who would own a division. Like I'm very like that's I'm interested from so basically like there's a couple of things I want to like understand, right? So first I want to understand the business opportunity for you. I also want to understand the business opportunity for the division owner. Like what kind of you don't have to go into big numbers. I don't need to know anything that you don't want to share publicly, but like what does the opportunity look like when you consider in the concessions and all that stuff for a division owner? And what type of person is the right type of person to be a division owner?
Well, I'll just break it down into generalities. So, in general, the opportunity is to profit on all of those various revenue streams. So that being said, it is a build and it's a process. Ideally, we'll have 8 teams in each division. First off, you have player registrations, where our players pay to play. They get the benefit of that game film, as I stated, and they're playing for prize money at the end of the season. So that, in and of itself, 30 men per team, 8 teams, 240 men, $100 a pop, plus or minus. You have 24K right off the bat. These are just the kind of scratching the surface. We're just getting started. Put the fans in the stadium, sell the concessions, and you start to be profitable. Add on sponsorships, and now you're really talking. The opportunity, though, is much, much, much bigger than that. The opportunity is a generational, once in a lifetime type of opportunity, because ownership in sports, there are actually only maybe 2 people of color who are owners in the NFL. There are maybe actually 3 total people of color in all of the major leagues who own teams. That might change. Those might be out of date numbers, but they're not good percentages. In our league, moving into 2022, we're looking at a very diverse group of ownership, and people of color, all will have the same opportunity to build an amazing legacy through this platform.
So when we talk about the players, right? You think of Major League I'm a baseball fan, football, NFL, all these major sports where the players get paid. So you're really creating an opportunity for what, players out of high school and college
That's right.
to
Yeah. 18 and older, whether they played in college, they may not have been able to continue for various reasons. They may not have made it into college. They might have aspired to play at a higher level. And so this is in the tradition of semi-pro across the country.
Mhm.
What differentiates us is we have the eyeballs on us. We have the electrifying game film with announcer calls that are just unbelievable. That'll go viral, and so those guys could be on Sports Center and be the stars that they are.
So that's interesting. So I mean, what's the I mean, on the conservative side, the benefit for the player is really just you get some exposure, you get some game film, and as a player you can use that game film to maybe catapult yourself into other sports and maybe earn a living on this. The the most liberal point of view, the biggest thing that can happen, you have a breakout star who gets to Sports Center, is what is your greatest aspiration that they end up, what's the best thing that can happen for a player in the A7FL?
Yeah, and I love how you phrase that. So conservative, liberal, and then kind of there's another level, dream.
Okay.
And and the amazing dream about it is our athletes are not only playing for those things that you mentioned, but for the brotherhood, for
Hmm.
their passion for the sport. Uh, you know, uh, because it gets them out of depression, because it keeps them active, because it keeps them healthy. So many positives, keeps them out of trouble. Ask anybody who's played sports, they'll tell you the same thing. The sports were a huge part of the structure and improving their lives. So at a certain level, that's the most important thing that
I
we do
love
in our
that.
league. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, one of the things I'm finding as I talk to entrepreneurs and business owners is that there's some sort of either personal benefit or institutional benefit that they see the benefit in developing, right? Like there's some experience that we've all had that pushes us forward into an opportunity that allows us to create the business, and it really harkens back to that fundamental idea of authenticity, the why of why I'm doing something. And the why of why you're doing something is probably very different than the why of why I'm doing what I do, but the authenticity is that little kernel that sprouts a big tree and a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. And as long as people can benefit, right? That's the key point here. As long as it's really a focus on the journey, not the destination. I think that's interesting.
That's right. And I would add and phrase that and say, um, the the side effects are the wealth, the fame, the
Sure.
whatever. That's initially what myself and anybody going into business is thinking about. Typically, I want to make $1 million, but you quickly learn if you're smart and do your studying and gain from the experience and knowledge of others that that's the side effect of doing your job, doing your goal, achieving your goal, which is in many cases, like you just mentioned, helping people. That's the essence of it. Doing something to help people and make it better.
So
Yeah.
So when you think about March 2020 is when the world changes, the United States changes, COVID, et cetera. I mean, I presume you guys just fully shut down, or what did you do during that period, and how did you kind of like maintain the traction that you had built?
We were the first football league back in action during COVID. So we hunkered down. We said to ourselves, are we going to, and we had to decide, are we going to postpone the season? Are we going to cancel the season like other leagues had done? Or are we just going to go on as planned? We wound up having to postpone to adjust for the timing. And based on that, we were able to find an amazing sponsorship with Salus, made by Oz Technologies.
What's
This
that?
is they're a company. They brought in not only the physical tests, but also the solution for tracking and managing our venue and making sure it was COVID free. So we were able to operate during COVID. First football league back in action. We had 4 teams in a shortened season. It was a huge success for us, though. We kept the momentum, and very important because we were raising, and we are still raising investment at the same time. So we're keeping the ball rolling, and it's paid off for us this season.
So let's talk about that investment round. I noticed I went to the investors part of the page. I got to the Start Engine site. Tell us about your investment round.
Sure. So it's a game changer. Regulation crowdfunding. Now anybody can invest in startup companies, whereas before you had to be an accredited investor or through some other means an early stage investor, which for the majority of Americans it was not possible. Now it's opened up through the Jobs Act. Anybody now can get involved in investing in a startup and watch that startup grow from that initial small valuation to hopefully 10x, 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 and to becoming a much bigger public company in the future. So for us, it's just been vital. We've now raised just about 500K from over 700 investors across the country, all now fans of the league, spreading the word of the league, coming to games. And actually, a very interesting thing, half of our new division owners have also been previously investors in our Start Engine campaign and initially found out about us that way.
That's really interesting. So, not investment advice. I just found this, but very interesting. So you can access this by going to A7FL.com. All the way at the bottom, there's investors. It'll take you to this Start Engine. So, what happens here? So, if I invest, looks like the minimum investment is $375. There's 19 days left. Um, so what happens? I invest. It looks like I'm buying in at $1.25 per share. How do I get like? How does this? How do I reap benefits? Like, is there a way to? Let's say that the cost per share goes to $2.50 and it doubles. Like, what actually happens in this funding round, and how do I ensure I can get my money out? How does that work?
Yep. So first off, you're buying equity and shares of the company, just like in buying a stock in any company. You own that equity at that point, and so the next stage for us after we complete this raise, ideally, and we raise the full $1.07 million max. So we are able to continue to extend this campaign until that point based on the circumstances. So after that point, we would close the raise. Then we have the ability then to move on to a secondary trading platform, and Start Engine has their own trading platform, and you can go on there now and you'll start to see some of their previous offerings that you can now look for liquidity or to purchase additional shares.
And what is the $1 million that you're raising? What is that? What are you going to push that for? Is it marketing? Is it process and procurement stuff? Tell us about that.
In general, the operations of the league. So everything from marketing to event production, to legal, etc. But yeah, a lot of different areas and things involved in running a football league and in general a sports league. Like you said, if we had known initially going into it, things might not have ended the way they are. It's sometimes very fortunate, when you take that risk with the belief in something very positive, and we can see it's proven itself. It's not only entertaining, the athletes love it, the fans love it, but now we're bringing on owners who are buying into it to help us expand. Very great time for us.
So you're expanding to Los Angeles, right?
Right.
Where will the games be played, or has that not been determined yet?
Yeah, not determined yet. We'll definitely let you know once we find out. We'll have a big announcement scheduled to announce these new division owners on our championship on July 18th. So yeah, we're excited.
Very cool. And tell us how people can find you.
And you can find us on A7FL.com, on Instagram at A7FL, YouTube at the A7FL, and on startengine.com/A7FL. You can invest in our league and own a piece of the future of football.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your Facebook page. It has 365,000 people following, 357,000 likes. That's great. That looks like I'm gonna start following this. This looks really interesting.
Thank you.
Sener Korkusuz, CEO, A7FL. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LA Business Podcast. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple or Google Play, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for a guest you'd like to hear on this podcast, please email me, robert@brillmedia.co. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.